difficulties. I appreciate your patience. I want to thank Betsy McMillian, who's not here, but also Susan Kane, who helped set up tonight. She did a great job.
Good to see you again. Are you staying?
Friends of the Patapsco Valley and Heritage Greenway is the group that's sponsoring this event. I'm John Slater. I'm the vice president. And right down front is Kit Valentine, who's the president, and I'll let him say a few words in a little bit. All right.
We got it working.
This is the animation.
Do you have any sound?
There's music that plays. Any board members are here from the Friends? If you'd stand up or raise your hand. There's a couple. How about planning, people on the planning, Thomas Viaduct Planning Committee? They've seen this before. That's why they didn't come tonight. I want Bob Miller to wave his hand, and Kathy. They're the ones that have agreed to tape this for us. We're going to be producing a video later, a CD later, that in about 6 months or a year we're going to have for sale with the animation on it, Ed's talk, and lots of other good facts about the Thomas Viaduct, so we'll have a real product. And they have volunteered over the years just like crazy. They live here in Oella, and they're good people. So let's give a round of applause for the Millers.
Literally, it won't even take a soft boot on us.
Yeah. There you go.
How many people here came on July 5th to the party we had in the park? All right, for those that didn't come, I want to tell you we had a cannon, a historic cannon launched the day. It fired off. We had 560 people plus or minus show up. At one point, there was a 15-minute backup to get into the park. It was backed up all the way to Route 1. There's obviously a great amount of enthusiasm and interest in this world of the Thomas Viaduct. We had a food vendor, Smokey's, who makes the best barbecue in Baltimore, by the way, right over off Route 1 near the cemetery. He asked me if I could guarantee 150, and I went, sure. And I was like tonight when Stephen Lee asked me how many people would come, I said, 50 at least. And I had no idea how many people would come. With a half hour left on the event, we ran out of food. I've never seen a smilier, happier food vendor in my life. And he was a little perturbed because he got there a half hour early before the gates opened, and he was fussing and cussing and giving us a hard time. But at the end, he was very happy when people would come up and he said, sorry, I'm out of food. And he'd sold everything. So he was really happy. We may have a poster. I'll show you in a little bit. The poster is for sale for $20. We have t-shirts, the poster's for $10. The t-shirts we have were for $20. And we've also got a little pamphlet that Jim Diltz and a professor from Morgan put together. It's a really nice little book that talks about the Thomas Viaduct. And we'll also have donation forms for you if you get so inspired tonight that you want to join up and help out with the cause.
So while we're waiting, do you mind if we ask some more questions?
Not at all.
About the building of the viaduct? It was built in the early or late 1820s. So was any slave labor involved? Did the B&O use any slave labor at all? Maryland was, of course, a slave state.
Probably not.
Okay.
I don't recall ever reading used slave labor in all my research. Not that I did anything specific on it, but if I had to bet, I would say not.
My other question is, how wide do you think those rails were on that 1860 photograph?
How wide?
Yeah, were they the standard 4 foot 8 1/4 or 8 1/2?
Oh yeah, we had gone through a whole type of rail development from the original strap rail, which was metal laid on top of stringers, wood stringers, to hair rail, to all different types of rail. You probably have seen some of the photographs. The classic way to tear up a railroad was to heat the rails and bend them around trees. Very famous journal, they call it the bow tie. So, but At first I thought your question was going to be, was the gauge the same?
Actually, that was where I was going. It's like, where was the gauge at the opening of the Civil War, and what kind of impact did that have as?
The B&O used standard gauge, which is the same distance as between the wheels of a Roman chariot. Okay, and then there were other railroads who used different gauges, and that was one of the challenges related to the Civil War with Stonewall Jackson stealing all the B&O's locomotives. Okay, dismantling them and taking them by horse and wagon to southern railroads to use in different gauges. After that Herculean task to move these locomotives, and some of them were camelback locomotives. These were monster locomotives. They didn't work on southern railroads with the gauges. And that was one of the issues with transferring cars. You could bring the cars of all kinds of produce or equipment from a railroad in the north to a railroad in the south that was using a different gauge. You had to unload the car, put it on another car that fit that gauge. When they standardized the gauge, you just switched cars out and go all over the country. So standardizing gauges in the railroad was significant impact the railroad had on industry and commerce in the country, and time. You know, before the railroad, it was a different time all over the country. It was noon in Baltimore when the sun was directly over you, but it wasn't noon in Pittsburgh yet, because the sun hadn't gotten that far west. So trains could not maintain their operations with a crazy schedule at no time. So they divided the country up into zones. And of course, people were crazy. This is private industry taking over. But it was necessary so that you had the standardization of time so that you could all be at the same place at the same time and keep the trains and all forms of life scheduled the way it should be. So if I say, I'll meet you at noon, well, my noon was different than your noon, so they standardized something. That's another contribution the railroad done.
What I find fascinating is the going down into the river, building the foundation, water.
And the river was very different in this then than it is today. I mean, the width, the depth. I mean, there was a time ships came up, as you know, to Bilchester and to load and go back to the port of Baltimore. And one of the reasons the river changed its construct was because of dropping the ballast. You know, they would come up loaded with ballast, drop the ballast, and then load cargo on, especially with tobacco. So they were filling in the river. We get it going yet?
What we're going to do is